Hey guys, welcome to the show. 888-659-3727. Great to be here. Another Tuesday night doing the Hair Loss Show. If you're new to the broadcast, don't know who I am, why I'm here. I am a consumer advocate for men and women dealing with hair loss. As insane as that seems, you guys have to realize that, 2/3 of you by the age of 35 will be suffering with some degree of hair loss. 40% of hair loss sufferers are women. This is a silent epidemic that affects just about every household in this country and around the world. And if you think that this is a niche or a niche program, then you have the same mindset as radio, because I've been doing this program for over 17 years, and I always joke about being kind of like the Rodney Dangerfield of radio, because I started broadcasting back in the day in 1998 from WABC Radio in New York City. And at the time, and throughout my entire career on terrestrial radio, there wasn't a broadcast professional who believed that this show would last. There wasn't anyone in radio who understood how a program like this could be, as they put it in radio, monetized. They had no idea that what we were dealing with here wasn't a niche. It wasn't just a guy coming on the radio to talk about, bullshit products and services. We were providing a platform for people like myself who were dealing with an issue that society just doesn't allow us to deal with, doesn't allow us to talk about publicly. A secret society of men and women who are willing to tune in and call in and read my books and find a place where they felt accepted, where it wasn't something that was looked down upon as far as being concerned about your hair loss. And radio never really understood that. Yeah, they throw me like a Sunday night spot. Initially when I started, I was being paid like $500 a broadcast from CBS Radio here in Los Angeles. I had to kind of decide to go brokered time across the board because as a consumer advocate, I wasn't, they were allowing anyone to advertise on the show, and that kind of went against what the show was about. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, going into our 18th year of this broadcast, I'm looking at guys who are kind of going online now, terrestrial radio guys who are, well paid on the radio, who never really understood how we were able to maintain, not only keep our program on the air, but basically this is my living. This is what I do. It was like black magic to them. There's a broadcaster who I have a lot of respect for, who recently I saw him post something online to a guy who was involved in paid programming back in the day. And this guy said something that he shouldn't have said to this well-known broadcaster. But his first response, this broadcaster's response was, well, at least I didn't have to pay for my airtime. And now this broadcaster is on the air himself, online, doing his own thing, trying to build a model after years of success on radio. And while he is having a monicum of success, and I think that he's reached his goals, there's really no money in it for him. They really don't understand how to turn what they're doing into a living wage. And while I have a tremendous amount of respect for this guy, and he has forgotten more about broadcasting than I will ever know, I had what I consider a desirable disadvantage. Because I was not given any real props initially in radio, I had to figure out a way to keep this show on the air, to get my message out there without selling out. Because honestly, everyone in radio, if you ever hear a radio ad, someone reading an ad on the radio about a product or service, do you think they really give a shit about that product or service? They're reading it because they got paid to read it. If someone is sending you to some laser clinic to have your face resurfaced and claiming that they went there to get it done or their wife went there, do you really believe that? In general, radio is the lowest common denominator for advertisers. And I built a broadcast kind of like fighting that notion or trying to go against the grain, so to speak, only allowing my listeners to learn about what really works out there. And that's a model that conventional broadcasting can never truly understand. So, I'm bringing this up again. I saw this guy write this, and I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, you've been on the air on your own internet broadcast, which is successful, by the way, and I'm a fan of. I really am. Again, this guy's forgotten more about broadcasting than I'll ever know. A consummate professional. I hope I pronounced that right. But I don't think that any of these guys from conventional radio can really comprehend what we've accomplished here through the Ball of Truth. It's beyond their comprehension. And frankly, I kind of like it that way. And I want to thank you guys for making this happen. I want to thank all of my listeners from the last 2 decades. I've been on the air for almost 18 years, who followed me from terrestrial radio to satellite radio to this online world, which is, look, I don't have the luxury of using someone's transmitters or call letters or their phony former ratings from some of the big guys that I was able to sell. I didn't know they were phony at the time, but we found out afterwards that, Arbitron is basically just an extrapolation of numbers that we don't even know if they're real or not. You made us one of the most watched and listened to internet broadcasts in the world. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to, just let you guys know that I will continue in the same vein. I am not going to promote bullshit on this broadcast. And we're going to continue to grow what we've built here and provide you guys with a safe place to learn, to share, to get your information about hair loss, to vent. And look, there's guys out there that disagree with me on certain things. They don't really have the insight that I have of the industry and what goes down as far as the complaints and all the stuff that I hear about every day and see from behind the scenes. And I get that. We welcome your calls too. But if you have a question or concern about your hair loss, this is your safe place. And I want you to know that. You can ask us the hard questions here, and we will tell you the truth. 888-659-3727. I know I just went on a rant. I'm going to say one more thing. We have Joe Tillman waiting on the line. He has some interesting stuff he wants to talk about, but I normally don't drink red wine on the air. This is what we had in the house. And the reason is, and you guys can tell me when you call in if you feel the same way, I have this thing about staining my teeth. And also, I hate speaking to people at parties who have been drinking red wines, especially old broads. Women my age who already have like the cracks in their lips and they're wearing like a lot of lipstick, don't drink red wine at a bar or parties. If you're expecting for anyone to be able to look at you seriously, stop drinking the effing red wine. Because your teeth are blue and you got the red wine cracks in your lips. So I try to avoid it, but it's good. So you're probably going to see my mouth turn blue during the broadcast. I guess I had to preface that before I took my first drink. 888-659-3727. I'm going to try to pot up Joe Tillman, who should be on my other Skype machine. Hey, Joe, you there?
I am here.
How are you, man? Do you know what I'm talking about with the red wine?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I have a glass every night, strictly for the cholesterol fighting abilities. And no, you're exactly right. It's like you go out to a bar, you're at some place where a lot of other people are hanging out, and you got the red wine.
Yeah.
And it's like the way that you described it, it was so visualized for me. I'm thinking about how I've seen in the past how some broads' teeth are as blue as permanent SMP. But anyway, so
but that's the truth, man. It's funny when I'm at like a conference, of professionals, and I see these old broads. They may be doctors or they may just be people in the field, and they're slightly lit and they have a blue all over their mouth from the red wine. I'm like, just go to the bathroom. How am I supposed to speak to you and take you seriously? And forget about the chicks that are trying to pick up on you. Like when you're in a bar, or especially when I was younger. I mean, I can't take it seriously. So once my mouth turns blue, let me know and I will rinse out.
Well, the great thing is you have the filter for your microphone, and it's pretty much in front of your mouth, so it's difficult to see. So.
Oh, that's true. Well, I kind of go like this once in a while. So if you see it, let me know.
Right on.
All right. So you wanted to call in today because you had a little bit of a gripe.
I got a few gripes today.
A little bit of an axe to grind.
Kind of an irritating day. It started early this morning. I get up at 7 every morning for various reasons, but let me.
By 7 o'clock, I mean, the animals are in. I've already fucking mowed the lawn. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, because it's brighter earlier down. Anyway,
that's true.
So I'm in Canada. Come on. I got a couple gripes. First, this is non-hair related, and I just thought I'd throw this in because I just like to bitch sometimes. But
all right.
So I'm selling this old stereo receiver I have, right? And this guy, I'm big on Craigslist. This guy's wanting to buy it, and we go back and forth for a few days because of scheduling. And it's like, fine, I'll bring it to you. So I bring it to him. This thing's like 5-6 years old. It's a really nice older Yamaha receiver. You know what the guy said to me?
What?
It's got a couple nicks on it.
Wow.
I'm kind of upset about that. Like, really? Well, I just drove here to give you this thing which is a smoking bargain.
But first of all, and I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I have this fear of like being murdered doing something like that. I would never drive anywhere or let anyone come to my house to buy anything off of Craigslist.
Oh no! I don't do that. I mean, this was to his business, so it was safe. I'm very careful about that stuff. But regardless. It was a 6-year-old receiver. It's got a few nicks on it. Then go to Best Buy and buy a new one, you idiot. Oh, anyway, so that's one rant. But no, the reason why I wanted to call in is because there are a couple things happening that they're really getting me upset. And this is coming from being a former consultant and seeing what others in the same position are doing, saying, what have you, to patients. And I have this issue because I never conducted myself like this when I was employed by a clinic, and right. being in the position I'm in now, I don't need to worry about offending anyone because I don't care.
Good. That's my job. I've been offending people since 1998.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting for someone to complain about me because then I know I've reached it. Right, I've reached that level.
That's right.
But so here's a basic question that everyone should be able to answer properly, but most don't. If I have a procedure, will I be able to of FUE? Will I be able to cut my hair as short as I like?
Right. Will
I be able to see the scarring? And there's someone online that had a procedure. He works for a clinic.
Right.
And he's posting up a photo, or he shared a photo with a patient, and said, "I can see no scarring on my own head." Now, the untrained eye would look at this and say, "Oh, yeah, okay, fine, yeah, good for you, right on."
Right.
And the average guy would be looking at it, going, "Wow, okay, well, FUE is scarless."
Right.
I can't stand this.
No, you're right, and I actually think, and I know that wasn't on our forum, but I think it's really irresponsible, and it's fine to say that from a social distance, visually, my wife or my girlfriend or whoever or myself, it doesn't seem to affect me. I don't really notice the scarring, but it's his responsibility to say, but the scarring is there.
It is there, and when you're using a photo that's very low contrast and very low light, and you're using this as some sort of representation of what you supposedly see every day in the mirror, it's the biggest steaming pile of BS out there. Because one of the things that I get when I'm talking to guys behind the scenes, and I got to say, I've been really busy behind the scenes talking to patients. People ask me questions, asking for my advice, second opinion type of deals.
Sure.
And I'm kind of surprised.
Well, you're like
by
a star now. Come on.
Well, because I'm on your show often. So, but the thing that bothers me
Just tell me when my teeth are blue. That's all.
I'm watching.
All right.
I'm watching. You know, when guys have a procedure like FUE and they're looking online, they're seeing, you know, the lack of the linear scar, and they're seeing people saying, yeah, I can go down really short. They don't think about how the reality of this works out. And, you know, the discussion about this was talking about, well, at least it's not a strip scar. Well, the BS about that is when young guys are looking to get FUE, you know, the popular hairstyles are the really short hairstyles, like the buzz or the high and tight or whatever. And
I got to tell you, I think mine's coming back. It took 30 years, but it's coming back.
Oh, your hairstyle. This is kind of like an early 80s coif.
Yeah, it's coming back.
I dig that one.
Thank you.
But it's one thing to say it's not a visible scar, but it's another thing entirely when you have this issue on your own head, you become paranoid about it. And the public doesn't have to know it's there.
Right.
If you know it's there and you can see it, you'll become just as self-conscious as someone that has something that may be just as visible to the public,
right,
to people walking around. And it bugs the hell out of me when people say, well, the public doesn't know it is there. But you do.
Well, and I totally get your point, and I agree with it. But I also think it's important that, I mean, there is certainly something to be said for, you know, if the guy sees himself as he had this procedure and he believes visually it's scarless, then he wins. If he's not paranoid, if he's not concerned about what other people are thinking, and he has more hair in his head, then he wins. But the truth needs to be told that, you know what? There is fibrotic tissue there. It's possible that, you know, like with any other hair transplant procedure, that as you continue, you're not going to be able to get more hair out, or there could be adjacent damage that you're unaware of. So all of these, you know, the entire scope and possible pitfalls of both procedures have to be put out there for public consumption.
Absolutely.
And I believe that anybody who is representing a hair transplant clinic who's doing anything differently is really not, they're not helping their clinic for sure, because in the end it's going to bite them in the ass, but they're not doing the best thing for patients.
Well, what this represents is an amateur type of approach, because the guy's new in the industry, and he honestly thinks
is the doctor new in the industry too?
Fairly new. He's kind of a newcomer, but the
I don't want to bash anybody, so don't even mention the name. But
no, I'm not going to mention the name, not yet anyway. But
I'm sure he's not part of what we do. So
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
but it's like if you're going to be the representative for a clinic, you have a professional responsibility to not dish out this, well, I can't see any donor scarring, so, you know, come have FUE with my clinic. It's like the marketing implications of that, it just kind of it bugs me, because it's so petty, it's so
well. But you have to understand that, you know, this is the way that the FUE has been marketed forever, and it's getting worse now. I mean, listen,
I know
NeoGraft certainly pioneered and set the stage for all of this, and you know, as a entrepreneur, as a business person, I can certainly see what their vision was and understand why they went that route. Unfortunately, pitting FUE against strip and doing it the way that it was done has created a lot of, you know, not only misinformation put out there online, but also a lot of guys end up being disappointed after the procedure because they're not given full disclosure. So in the end, I believe it's hurting their brand, and it could hurt other brands. You know, listen, I spoke about it 2 weeks ago that I am, you know, consulting for Restoration Robotics. They contact me. They ask me questions about what they think needs to be done to help consumers. And I told them the one thing you need to stay away from is anything that's completely scarless. Do not promote artists as being scarless, because it's not.
Absolutely not.
And they're cool with that. They're like, listen, you know, we came to you because we want to do what's best for the consumer. So, I mean, I'm hoping that as things evolve, people are going to realize, you know what? It's another option for us. I don't want to have a linear scar. This is a great device that can really help me have a good hair transplant, help a physician provide me with state-of-the-art results without having that linear scar, but I'm still going to have scars. They may not be noticeable to the outside world. I may be able to cut my hair much shorter and have more styling options. But when push comes to shove, I shave my head and I get a suntan, there are going to be scars. And this is something else I want to bring up. There's a lot of guys out there that are promoting these very tiny punches. Some guys in Europe, and when you see these guys shaved down, they do look and they do appear like they're getting a scarless procedure. Mm-hmm. Problem is, what's being extracted are extremely skeletonized grafts, which these guys have no idea what that means. But the truth is, there's a large percentage of these grafts that will not grow the way they're supposed to grow. And you know about this. They may not grow at all, or they may grow in, even if the direction of growth, as far as creating the recipient sites, is made in the correct way, just because these grafts are damaged, they can end up growing in the wrong direction. They could also end up growing in a fuzzy, curly way, something that doesn't even look like your own hair.
Nothing can change the dynamics of how hair grows more so than a damaged follicle from hair transplantation.
And that's very well said. So anytime, I see these guys who are saying that we can go in there, we can regenerate hair, we can create a scarless look. And you know what? If you shave these guys down, they do look scarless. But what's on top of their head is not great.
No.
And frankly, they're spending a tremendous amount of money for these procedures because they are so concerned of what's happening behind them, in the back of their head. And while they should be, you definitely want to come away with a procedure that, you look relatively untouched. The reality is, right now, in 2015, there is no such thing as a scarless procedure. And if you want to have really good FUE, you have to create an incision that allows for a robust graft to be extracted. And if you don't, in my view, you're not getting a great hair transplant.
And the way that you say it usually is once you're cut, you're cut. And I've kind of adopted that saying, but it also applies to FUE, and I've kind of modified that overall. Where once you have hair transplant surgery, doesn't matter what kind, your head will never be the same.
That's correct.
Period. End of story. So, I can understand and I can appreciate when people say, yeah, I had X number of grafts and you can't even tell with my short haircut. That's awesome. That's the whole point of being able to have that. But you don't have 100% freedom as if you never had the surgery to begin with. And anyone that says otherwise has either never had the procedure or they're purposely spreading misinformation.
No, they're liars. That's the way that it is. Listen.
Yeah.
I am the biggest proponent of FUE, and someone in the chat room said, "What about something that states minimally scarring, or what do you say?
Minimal scarring."
Minimal scarring.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt if it's done correctly and you use the right size punch, you're going to have less visible scarring. The problem is once you get into the 5,000 graft range, 6,000 graft range, you're certainly going to have a potential confluence of scarring depending on where the grafts are taken from, and they're going to have to go beyond the so-called or, what we consider to be the safe zone. Now,
the sweet spot.
Right. But with that said, in some cases, I don't think that's such a terrible thing because especially if the scars are small enough, even if someone recedes and continues to progress, it may give them the opportunity to have hair for another 20 years and they feel comfortable. And, if their donor fringe does go down or does become depleted, as long as that scarring isn't really significant and it's not that visible to the naked eye, they still have the opportunity to enjoy that hair for a long period of time. But they need to be educated on that fact that this may not be permanent.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
And as long as they know about that, then that's fine. But that's not the way it's being sold. I hope to change that. And obviously you do as well because you're going out there and you're beating your drum.
Well, there's also, what you just said reminds me of a conversation I had with a consultant at a different clinic a couple years ago, where they were talking about how they harvest nape hair for the hairline.
Yeah.
And I have never understood.
Well, that's that nape hair is one of the first things to go, especially if you're
exactly.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, and you know what his response was when I brought that up? You know what it was? He said, "Well, they just come back in a couple years and have some more."
Oh yeah. I know
It's like,
that.
no, that's not the point. The point is to not have to come back.
Well,
The point is to be able to carry on with your life so you can say, screw hair loss, I'm done.
look, there's a doctor here in Los Angeles that gets a tremendous amount of press, and he's known for body hair transplants, and he does a lot of nape hair stuff. And, I won't even entertain. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I think he believes in what he's doing. I hope that he does, but I won't even entertain having this guy as a part of the IHRS because he is transplanting a lot of nape hair and a lot of body hair. And, some cases are over $100,000.
I know. I've seen them.
And
I've seen them in person.
And I think there's at least one guy that you may have sent me who was severely damaged. And, listen, I believe in being able to provide help to those who otherwise would never be treated. Guys who are so stripped out, who are so damaged, and giving them the opportunity to live their life again. And I do believe that this particular doctor has helped some patients in that way.
I agree.
But for the average patient to walk into this guy's office, I personally believe it is I don't want to say mistake, but it's definitely should not be their first person to think of having surgery with.
Well, I'll put it like this.
Yeah.
If you are a virgin scalp, Norwood 6, never had surgery before with really nice donor hair, and you walk into a clinic and they convince you to not really touch your donor hair on your scalp, but to go ahead and carpet bomb the scalp with a bunch of body hair.
And I'm talking about 7,000 grafts or some shit like that.
Times 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't, I'm not even sure I can find the words to describe that type of scenario. It's like, what logic, what common sense is in someone's head that says, I've never had surgery before. Yeah, let's just use body hair for my scalp. I don't, why?
Well, it's because, when people sit down, they're sitting, they're speaking to a doctor, and the doctor's saying, listen, I'm capable of doing this. Other clinics can't do it. I believe that, we can kind of, preserve your donor hair on your scalp and utilize all this incredible body hair that we have. And then they will sell them. And this is, from what I understand, may not be this particular doctor, but other doctors, on the concept, and it's never really been proven. Only one guy made this claim that once chest hair, for instance, is transplanted to your scalp, they say it takes on the characteristics of head hair or scalp hair eventually. I've never really seen that.
Here's the way I look at it, okay? And this is my own personal experience because I have had body hair.
Yeah.
Years ago with Dr. Wong, we were doing some experimentation. I was a guinea pig. But I've also seen plenty of cases in person. And I stand on record as saying that body hair on the head looks like, wait for it, body hair on the head.
Yeah. And I've seen
it doesn't change.
No.
The only thing that may change is the anagen state of growth may increase to where it gets longer. I have seen that. But you can't say to me that, like this one patient in particular who had hair very similar to my own that was medium, almost fine to medium coarseness, very straight, fairly pale white guy, but with very coarse and curly salt and pepper chest hair. You can't tell me that that's going to turn into anything remotely similar to the scalp hair.
No, and listen, I think it could be really great underground, kind of, if you need that coverage. And,
absolutely.
If you go to the right doctor, who's really able to, able to extract the hair in a really, in a very viable way, great. It could really help. But for the average patient, man, and when that's being sold, when I hear guys who are coming to me saying that this guy gave them a $50,000 estimate for a procedure, it just blows my mind.
Unless it involves a cardiac surgeon, it shouldn't cost anywhere near $50,000.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me. If you're getting a heart transplant, maybe. But listen, I'm glad you brought this up because the rep. It's possible that this rep really believes in what he's saying, as far as at least in his world, what he saw in his head. But he's, if he's an actual rep that's in the trenches, he has to realize that I'm sure patients are coming in who are complaining about the scarring because it's there.
Well, to be fair, he's a remote rep. He's not actually in the clinic.
Okay.
He's kind of like an online representative, which is fine. And what I'd like to say to this guy is, kind of pull the reins back and think about what you're saying, because when you post this kind of stuff, people are reading it and they're taking it to heart, especially the people that have never had a surgery and are being a bit more naive about these things. I looked at these photos and I'm just kind of shaking my head. I see confluence of scarring on the surface of the scalp.
Right.
I see some dots, and then I even downloaded the picture and I brightened it and did some color correction, and it was just glaringly obvious that there was scarring, and it just really upsets me, because I know that there are guys out there that would look at it and say, yeah, okay, I see in this low contrast, bad lighting photo,
Sure.
not much scarring. Hey, I think I'll have some. I'll have some of that.
Well, look, I saw,
and then later on, when they notice that they have the scarring, people around them may not notice it, but they notice it's there. It kind of feels weird, and they're not used to it, and it's just kind of a new feeling.
Right.
It makes them feel very self-conscious. So when they go out in public, it's really no different than having visible scarring.
And that's the thing. It's very well said. All you have to do is tell them it's going to feel slightly different. It's going to look different upon close inspection.
Yeah.
But in most cases, especially if you're having a relatively small case, under 2,500 grafts, no one's going to notice it except for you. So if they're prepared for that, right away they're mentally set. They're like, okay, I see it. It's there. I was warned about it, but I know no one else can see it.
Yeah.
So they're not going to walk around self-conscious. I was sent a set of photos from a guy who is utilizing the smaller punch, the 19-gauge needle for the artist, using the new motor, which is 3,000 RPM. And I was pretty impressed. A 1,500 graft case, relatively small case. So obviously, the extractions were spread out over, a pretty significant area. The guy was completely shaven down after 3 months. Mm-hmm. Very well lit. It looked great. Now, the guy had very light skin, so the hypopigmentation from the scarring blended in very well with the rest of the skin. Now, what I want to see is how that looks if this guy gets a tan. But, if I could be, in all fairness, I was very impressed with the results, especially with the hair grown out about 2 inches. So, yes, it's absolutely possible to walk away looking like you have a scarless procedure, but it's not scarless, even in the best hands.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all people have to know. So
that's all people need to know.
If there's a rep out there that's doing this on a certain website, I think it's the responsibility, honestly, of the website to, or someone on the website to call them out.
Well, I think, no, I agree with that, but I think that this is being bannered about quite a bit behind the scenes and with other clinics. It's obvious it is. You still see it in the ads, right? Scarless procedure, no scar procedure, things like that. And I just think that, I don't know, I wish that we could do something to kind of start to up the standards of behavior and advertising ethics. I know.
I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to laugh, man. But I've been doing this for 18 years, and my goal was to make that happen. And you know what? When I founded the IHS, when I founded the American Hair Loss Association, I really believed that the doctors who we gave, in my view, a tremendous amount of credibility to, the guys that are really doing the best work out there, I believe that everyone would band together and take a stand. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's like herding cats. So I realized that my responsibility was just to safely guide people in the right direction as best as I can. But for anyone to take a stand and say, you know what, we're going to draw a line here and say, unless you're doing this a certain way, you're not doing it right. These guys are afraid of getting sued. They don't want to deal with what we have to deal with. They don't want to deal with what I have to deal with. And in a way, I can't blame them. But the truth is, I think if they had a little more courage, it would make their lives a lot easier. And in the end, it would help patients so much.
Well, I agree 100% with that. And that kind of falls in line with the other rant that I've got going on today. And that has to do with, we see all these patients talking about how, the rep the rep from this clinic was so helpful and how the staff is so wonderful and everyone was attentive to the needs and blah, blah, blah. But what happens after the surgery?
Sorry, man. I'm checking my phones. I'm like, my Vonage is not working right now.
We can hear that.
Yeah.
Not sure he wants to hear your messages, but
yeah.
But you know, I'm starting to get some feedback from people contacting me saying that they've had a wonderful experience with Clinic X, but ever since they had the surgery, they haven't really heard from the clinic much.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And I'm starting to get more and more of this because maybe because I'm starting to look for it too. But I was talking to someone recently who said that he asked his doctor a critical question, and what I mean by critical, I mean he was the question was regarding the type of procedure that he had, and the doctor apparently started giving him the cold shoulder when he started asking more and more questions about what kind of procedure he had, because apparently the doctor had been changing some things. And had gone from one system to the other. And when this patient was inquiring about this, he started getting the cold shoulder. And it just and this is another thing that kind of irritates me. Actually, it kind of pisses me off is, when you're a patient and you're going into a clinic, talking to the doctor, talking to the rep, whoever, we tend to forget that we're the ones that have the power as the patient. We tend to revert back to the childlike state of when our parents would take us to the doctor's office, and we're always taught to trust the man in the white coat, right? And so when we walk into the office as patients, we're scared, we're intimidated, and part of it's because everyone in the building knows why we're there. And we're about to walk in and about to talk to someone that's a complete stranger about our innermost issues that cause us the most stress through the day, and that's our hair loss. But what we forget about is the fact that we're hiring these doctors to do a job for us. In other words, they're interviewing with us, the patients.
Exactly. And that's something I've been trying to get across to our listeners and our viewers for years. You are the boss. You are making the decision to hire these guys. They are trying to sell you on their expertise and what they can do for you.
Do a job for you.
Yeah. You need to get full disclosure. During the procedure, you need to ask questions. Don't be afraid to speak up. If something it makes you feel uncomfortable, even after you got that Valium, you can still as long as you're not cut, you can still get up out of that chair and walk away.